welcome back to Straight Facts on Friday. I'm joined by Staffy. Lawless is away at an event today. So Staffy and I, obviously, we've just seen the Ukraine beat Slovakia. And another entertaining game at the Euros, Staffy.
When you put entertaining games, don't come along with England. It's how convenient is it that Lawless is not here today? Lawless, what happened? I was looking forward to having a talk with two of my close British / UK friends. You know, I don't have a lot of UK friends that I know outside of you guys on YouTube. So I was looking forward to it. Lawless, when you're watching this on the replay, just know you were missed on this show. I was just very looking forward to talking about it. But yeah, there's been a lot of entertaining games. Unfortunately, none of them fall in the category of your nation. So pretty much you enjoyed every game bar your country's game. So I'm actually looking forward to hearing that from you. You know,
and mate, 100%, I agree. I think I didn't really enjoy the opening. I did enjoy the opening game because it was the opening game, but it wasn't competitive. Germany just destroyed Scotland. 100%. I feel like every single game since then, barring England's, have been great. Now, England's might actually be good for neutrals because both teams can win it. I'm just from an England fan's point of view, they've been awful to watch. The others, just watched it there. Slovakia, better team in the first half. Ukraine played some good football towards the end of the first half. And in the second half, I thought they were great. And I mean, the winning goal, the touch out, it was Berbatov, Cantona-esque. It was absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, as I say, it's been an amazing tournament, but England have been awful. And I stand by what I've been saying for ages. Although this is a very, very unpopular opinion, I would sack Southgate today. And
I saw your tweet.
I genuinely would. I genuinely would.
I don't know what's crazier, the English fans wanting him sacked mid-tournament or him saying he's experimenting mid-tournament. I don't know which one is more crazy. Because when he came out and said that yesterday, I couldn't believe it. If I will tell you this, if I was an English fan, I would be pissed too. But it's very nice to be on this side for once, seeing someone who's very similar to United, that's as frustrating as United. But I'm not a part of that, so I can actually sit here and laugh at someone else's misery, and I've been enjoying every bit of it. But let's be objective about it. Obviously, the banter is good and all that. Let's be objective about it. Southgate, I think I said it on Straight Facts last week, Terry. When was the first Straight Facts before the tournament kicked off? I think it was last week.
It literally was last week. Yes.
And I did predict this. I said this is probably your worst team. This is going to be the weakest tournament you've been in under Southgate. And so far, it's been delivering the same way I thought. And if you remember, we'll revisit this now and we'll talk about it. I thought the main issue is there's no balance in this team. The team on paper looks good. The names look good. But when you put them all together and you mesh them all together, and at the end of the day, you have Southgate as your manager, I'm not surprised that this is the end product. Southgate had a lot of big decisions to make when he selected this team. And he showed me he made the wrong ones. And even when he puts on the 11, the fact that he went out with the same 11 back-to-back shows me that he does not know how to operate this team. There's unfortunately, and big up Steve, I see Steve in the comments, me and him had to talk about this. We said this is the one tournament that there's so many good teams, but there's a lot of bad managers that are managing these big teams. England, unfortunately, are one of them. Because when you look at the names, on paper, they all look good. Phil Foden, Harry Kane, Foden Saka, Trent, Rice. Yeah, these are good names. You put them together, the team does not work. The team, Southgate selecting the 11, it does not help anyone else. Like, the players that he puts together do not help each other. You get what I'm saying? Like, all these players individually in their clubs, they look decent. But when he puts them together, they don't look good. And I think there was an issue with him sacrificing certain names when he made the selection in before the tournament. We've seen the likes of Grealish and Rashford and them being dropped. And I understood it, but I knew eventually it would bite them because you're missing certain profiles that make other profiles look good. And I'll tell you how as an example. Harry Kane. I think Harry Kane has been abysmal. Is he a good player? Of course, we all know he's a good player. But why is he looking bad? When you look at the support cast, what works out with Kane? When you look at him historically with Bayern and with Spurs, he kind of needs runners around him, needs wingers that kind of stretch out the pitch for him. We've seen him, his best partnership ever came with Son. What was Son known for? Being that wide attacker that makes these runs in behind. So when he drops, he can play that ball in behind for him, or anyone in the midfield can play the ball in behind for these runners. That's the space that Harry Kane leaves. When Harry Kane leaves that space, who's occupying that space? Is Foden that type of winger that does that? No. Is Saka that type of winger that does that? No. Is Trent in the midfield being utilized correctly? What is Trent known for? Trent is known for his passing range. What is the use of his passing range when there's no range to pass for? Who's he passing to? There's no one
Mm.
on the pitch for him. So that's what I'm saying. Collectively, they all look bad. Declan Rice, as an example, and I'm so happy. Listen, there's a bit of banter that was going to come to this, and I was looking forward to this because all season I told these guys Rice is not a lone six. When I made that comparison to Basuma, it wasn't necessarily because of form. Of course, Basuma's form was shit, but when I made that comparison to Basuma, it was because of his individual capabilities on his day. Obviously, Basuma fell off and was just decided to not play football for the rest of the season. But I kept saying Rice is good in a double pivot or in the 8. He cannot be the guy that holds the midfield. He's not the guy that you want right in front of your back line. Putting him next to Trent made it even worse because Trent is not even a deep lying midfielder as well. So Trent can't do what Partey does as an example for him. What a Rodri does, or he doesn't even do what a Manu does, and Manu's not a lone six. So all these players together, they look frustrating to watch, but it's all on the manager at the end of the day. So I feel for you guys. I'm enjoying it. I feel for you guys.
It's interesting because Southgate in 2018 and Southgate in 2021, he broke the mold in the sense of I felt he was picking the best team and not the best players. Now, some of the team he was picking were good players, and the last Euros is a great example. And I agree that Kane needs runners, but I wouldn't reduce Raheem Sterling's performance at Euro 20. I know it was Euro 2020, but it was played in 2021. To just him being a runner. He was our best player at the tournament. He carried the team in certain games. He was magnificent. But he was picked and put into this squad after a very poor season, with fans saying, but he shouldn't be in the England team. He didn't have a great season. And from my perspective, I understand that to a certain degree because you've got Manu and you've got Cole Palmer on the bench who are there, who have both had tremendous seasons and they're not getting minutes. Adam Wharton, excellent since he joined the Prem, not getting minutes. You've got Gordon that plays on the left, not getting minutes. So there's that element where you think, well, you're there, you've had good seasons. Why are you not playing any? Why are you not being used as the individual? Look, Eze is good. Eze is good. I like Eze. But there are individuals that have had better seasons than him that should be given a chance. However, what England have gone and done wrong is we are doing two things. Players like Rashford, players like Jack Grealish, I understand why they were not picked, but they were integral for England. People always slag off when he was in bad form for Man United. How can Maguire be in the squad? Because for England, that man has consistently delivered at tournaments. Now, Gahey's doing a good job. I don't think John Stones is by his own standards. There are players that are missing that may not be on paper. Everyone, you wouldn't put them in the top tier, but as a team, we come together. So I think what he's now doing is he's doing what Sven did and Capello did with the Scholeses and Gerrards and Lampards. He's trying to fit all these players into a system rather than saying, you know what? I want Bellingham playing as the attacking midfielder stroke 10. So therefore, Foden, you're holding the bench and you'll come on if he's not having a good game. 100%. We are forcing this so much and it's making us imbalanced. And that's a real issue for us. The second element, and you mentioned Harry Kane, and I stand by this. I've watched him in his opening 2 games. Maybe he's carrying an injury. Maybe it's because of a long season and it's warm in Germany. I'm going to put out the balance at the beginning. But if I'm being honest, he looks physically finished. Mm-hmm. He looks a shadow of himself. Now, if you give him service, he is going to score. But 2 games running, he has been physically manhandled by whatever centre-back he's gone up against. Harry Kane was what I always used to call deceptively quick. He was quicker than he looked like he was going to be, but there is no pace almost whatsoever there anymore. You saw it a few times where he tried to break away with the ball. Now, of course, he took his chance that he got well, and there's still probably, you could argue there's no better finisher other than Mbappe at this tournament from those areas than Kane. But we look slow and too static with him, and I was very angry after the game and I was annoyed at Kane's performance, but I just sort of reflected. I've watched sort of extended highlights back, and this isn't the Harry Kane that I was hoping and expecting to see. And it's interesting because I never claimed to watch tons and tons of other nations' football. I watched him play basically in the Champions League this year, where ironically he's got a lot of speed and a lot of runners around him at Bayern, and they dominate the ball and they're always generally the superior team. I haven't watched many Bundesliga games. I wanted to buy him in the summer, looking at him this summer, I know there's goals there. People go, you can't criticize a person getting goals. I feel like there's going to be a really quick decline physically in that man looking at him right now. I really do. And a lot of that, I think, is going to stem through being overplayed in all those years at Spurs, coming back from injuries too soon. What is he now, 31, 32? And
31,
I just looked at him and I'm just like, oh, Watkins came on and there was so much more energy about this team. The problem is when he came on, and it's probably the biggest individual problem with this team, and I know Southgate has said, I haven't resolved the Phillips situation, which is bullshit anyway. Phillips was at the last tournament and didn't get any minutes. So he resolved it then. We have no controllers in the middle. Rice is not a controller. Bellingham isn't a controller. We have two in the squad that could do that job. They're different from each other. You've got Manu and you've got Wharton. I don't actually mind which one goes in, but we need players. Those two are, Wharton looks a bit more like him in terms of his style of play, but they are sort of, from an English perspective, the Carrick-esque players. But we never gave him the game time either. The English have a real phobia, in my opinion, over players that are not spectacular, that are not smashing into tackles or scoring screamers. They have a real issue with those players that knit the team together. And without those two coming into this team, I don't actually think it matters, because we took off all the front three, played more pace, and we still looked as disjointed. So they need to come into the team for the next game for me. But I have a horrible feeling it'll be almost the same as we've seen. You'll probably see Trent come out and somebody else come in, but I would not be surprised if Trent is dropped and it's Gallagher that starts.
But this is not a one sub solution. I hear everything you said, and I agree with everything. I would say almost everything you said. This is not a one or two substitution solution. There is a lot that needs to change. Like, I don't even want to dwell over it too much, but let's just go back to Kane, because we mentioned Kane. First of all, I think this should be the last time Kane is selected for England. Not necessarily because he's going to be washed right after this tournament. He is on a decline. Yes, just at this age, yes, he can only decline from here. You know, especially physically. Maybe not footballing ability, but physically.
Legs, yeah.
When you look at the type of player that Kane is, because Kane is not is an unorthodox type of striker. Okay, he's not a Haaland, he's not a Lewandowski, he's not these type of strikers that kind of like to camp in the box a little bit, play off the shoulder, offer all these runs in behind. Yes, here and there they'll be on the ball. He just plays in a style of play that's very unfamiliar with most strikers. He's a unique type of striker. When he's not on his best game, especially physically, you cannot afford to have your system revolve around him, because he's such a unique type of striker to have. You have to accommodate a few things around him. And fair enough, it works when he's at his best because he's a world-class player. But because he's on a decline, you cannot afford to play this style of football for him when he's not at his best. If he wants to drop and play in the midfield all the time, fair enough, but you have to be very good at it. And you have to be very good at your passing range. You have to be very good at your shots whenever you take a shot. He is not at that right now. He's looking very sluggish on the ball. He's looking very sluggish off the ball. You cannot afford to have that right now. This should be his last tournament 100%, because it's an easier fix if Kane is not there. It actually saves you the headache of dropping this big name as well, because having a big name and putting him on the bench, everyone's going to be like, why is Kane on the bench?
Yeah,
you need to play him. That saves you the headache.
I'm starting to feel the same. And look, there's some interesting comments here and challenge to it. Terry, he personally had one of the best Bundesliga performances by any striker ever. He delivered since the first minute. Listen, if we feed Harry Kane chances, I'm not saying he won't score. But remember, we spoke about this at Man United when it comes to Cristiano Ronaldo. And still to this day, Ronaldo fanboys don't want to hear it. Yes, if we were able to create those chances for him, we could score. But are we going to be able to create the chances? Because it's almost like you're carrying a player to a certain degree. And I don't think Harry Kane has fallen off the hill. No one has said he is finished. We're talking about he's starting to physically decline. And a lot of players, that starts in their early 30s. He's 500 to 600 games into his career. That is a typical game span where you start to see players fall backwards. And maybe it's about adapting his game. Maybe he can be part of the squad in 2 years, but he maybe shouldn't be the starter. He's been around the England team for a long time, and I want to be fair and objective about this. And that's the problem with a lot of people. I love Harry Kane. I want him to win major trophies because I believe his overarching ability and delivery in his career almost deserves to sit at the table with some of the legends of the game. But he hasn't won no trophies yet, so he can't. But at the same time, I care more about my nation being successful. And yes, Foden's had stick. Yes, Trent's had stick. the criticism towards Kane has been almost zero, and I find that disrespectful to the others. He looks physically shot as well as performing bad at this tournament. He really does.
But even the biggest issue is as well, you're not controlling games. You cannot afford to have Harry Kane as your outlet when you're playing on the counter. That first game, who'd you play in the first game where you won 1-0?
Serbia.
Serbia. That was pathetic. I'm not gonna lie. You guys won, but it was such a pathetic game. Every time on the counter, I saw Kane being your outlet. Since when is Kane an outlet? You cannot have these type of players on your team and you're conceding this amount of possession. Yesterday, you need to understand this. Man of the match was Højbjerg. Højbjerg was man of the match against England with a midfield that has Rice, Bellingham, Trent. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. No one would get away with this. No one would absolutely get away with this. And this is why when we're talking about these things, there is major changes that need to happen in this team. If you want to keep Kane in this team, fair enough, because he's not going anywhere. Anyways, the tournament is still going on. What are you going to do to control games? You need to drop big names in order for this to work. Are Liverpool fans ready for Trent to be dropped next game? I actually, if you don't mind, Terry, I would like to tell you what I think is the fix with this team. And then I'll have the chat, I guess, give us their opinions and their thoughts on it. Because there's big names that need to be dropped in this team. And I feel like all these fan bases, because they all belong to different teams, aka Arsenal, Liverpool, United, blah, 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 they're all going to be like, no, you cannot drop my guy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think they're willing to sacrifice this. And this is the 11 that I think they need to change and to go into it in with next game. Trent in the midfield does not work anymore. Kyle Walker needs to be dropped. You do not need Kyle Walker in your team with the way that you're playing football right now. Your goal right now is to control games. Trent being that extra guy inverting into the midfield, helping you control games. This is what you need to do. So you put him on the right, in right back instead of Kyle Walker. If you don't want to do that and you want to run Kyle Walker, that's fair enough. But then on the other side, Trippier needs to get dropped. Joe Gomez played as a left back all season. He inverts as a third center back very well. You could easily put him there, keep Gahey there, keep Walker there, but then you have Stones does what he does best, and he does for City, invert into the midfield. Now, when he goes into the midfield, he helps whoever exists there. Now you can get a double pivot potentially of Rice and Stones instead of what's his name, Trent and Rice, because that's a better pivot. And then you look at the midfield. You don't need Rice, Trent, and Bellingham in the midfield. There's no controls in this midfield. One of these guys needs to get dropped. If you want to drop Rice, or you got to drop Bellingham. And this is the biggest issue. No Arsenal fan in the right mind will say Rice needs to get dropped, and no England fan in general will say that Bellingham needs to be dropped. And that's where a sacrifice needs to be made. I don't mind Bellingham playing with Kane because he makes up for the lack of physicality that he has. And we've seen him with Madrid invade that space that they don't have a striker occupying. And he's been bagging all these goals and he crashes the box. You can keep him there. But then you don't need Rice in the midfield with Bellingham because you have no control there. You have Adam Wharton and you have Mainu. One of these two, which Mainu's a little bit better in the final third, and Wharton is better in the first third. You need one of these two there. But are these fans ready to what's it called? Drop one of these two? They won't. And one more big name. Sorry, Terry. One more. Foden and Saka. There's an issue there. I don't think, as much as I rate Foden, I don't think Foden fits the system. And this team is not built for Foden to play football in it. I think you keep Saka on the right, even though I rate Foden more than him, but you keep Saka over there, and then you bring in Eric Gordon. You don't is Eric or Aaron?
Anthony Gordon.
Anthony. I always mix him with this NBA player. I don't know why. Anthony Gordon. Sorry, the guy from Newcastle. You play him there because he's the most natural left wing you have in this team. So if you make these changes, that team significantly will look better. But then on the issue is now you're gonna have either a Rice, a Bellingham, plus a Foden potentially on the bench. And I don't think there's a lot of fans that are ready to accept that. And the chat, as I said.
Yeah, and listen, I think you're right in terms of that. We got to get our stars on the pitch mentality from sort of the neutral England fans. And then because they still won't understand the concept of best team over best players, which is still, I don't know how many shows I've said, what's Man United's best team? There should never be one. Horses for courses. And it shouldn't always be your best players. And I also I mentioned Mainu coming on yesterday. And you almost know when you see the comments, I see in this comment, Mainu isn't a controller. Well, I do think he controls the tempo of a game. I think I think that's what he does. And is he the finished article at 19? No, no one's claiming that. Adam Wharton isn't the finished article, but they're the only two that we have in our squad that can do a job of that ilk. And what Southgate said about them, that we don't have a solution for Phillips, what does that do to these young men's confidence? You brought them to the tournament and you're publicly stating we have no one else that can play midfield, but so we're trying to experiment with the right back there and it isn't working. Yet you've got these two young men. It's crazy what he said about them. But then when you look at the profile on the socials of the people that don't want Manu in the team, it's typically fans who regard Man United as a rival because their fear is Manu comes in, England look better and he gets praised, and their tribalism can't allow for it. And it's one of my biggest bugbears with England fans in general. And then you have people that support English clubs who don't necessarily like England, but understand where the issues lie. And I've said all along, I don't mind if it's Manu or Adam Wharton because I care about England, but one of those two needs to come into this team. Some players have got to be sacrificed. And it isn't because Declan Rice is rubbish. It isn't because Harry Kane is rubbish. It isn't because Foden's not a good footballer. People have got to stop being so weak to the banter that comes their way and understand it's about creating balance. And every team I've watched in the tournament so far, ironically, barring probably Scotland, has looked so balanced. I just watched Slovakia versus Ukraine. On paper, neither side has as good of players as England, but there's a balance that they're working in unison with each other. They all know their job because they're all playing in their natural positions. They're all playing in a system that gets the best out of all of them. This is a team sport. It's not boxing. It's not tennis. It isn't MMA where it's all about getting the best out of you. It's a team sport. And we are not a team right now. We're a bunch of individuals in so many ways. And the fan bases, the England fan base and the fan bases of Premier League clubs don't make it any easier because you can tell in their analysis, it's just saturated in tribalism and bitterness and this they're just praying. I hope it's City. I hope Foden's the guy that wins the game for us. You'll have Arsenal fans. I hope Declan Rice does it. I hope Saka does it. I hope it isn't Kane that wins it. I hope it isn't, Manu coming on and he starts to deliver and is. Why? It shouldn't matter if you support England. It shouldn't matter for a single moment, but it seems to. And I think all of these elements filter into dressing rooms. And England had this problem with the golden generation. And I was at Wembley many, many times where I remember sitting near a guy, Gary Neville was taking a throw in, and the abuse this England fan was giving him just because he was a United player. I've seen people abuse Liverpool players just because they're Liverpool players, Arsenal players, vice versa, depending on who I was sitting around in the ground. And I would look at them all and just think, you lot are mad. When I was first on social media like 10 years ago, I did this thing one summer where I went and bought an England shirt and I had Gerrard on the back. And I basically sort of said it along the lines of, I'm Man United fan, but I'm going to wear Gerrard because he's Liverpool on my England shirt. And I think all England fans should sort of do this, like pick a rival from a club you dislike at club level and back him for England and try and get rid of this weird tribalism. That tribalism amongst fans also used to exist in the dressing room. And all those ex-players from that golden generation speak of the cliques and the groups. So for me, it's a case of the fans are almost pushing in this bad mentality, this bad culture that hindered a 20-year period of English football because of club tribalism. And I thought Southgate got it absolutely spot on for about 4 or 5 years. We had the balance right, the togetherness, the tribalism went away. There's this, none of this, we have to play our superstars. We will play the best team possible. And he got it right to a certain degree. Wasn't a good enough manager to get us over the line. Now I'm looking at us and it feels like the England I grew up watching, which is full of individuals and cliques. And the manager is a really important part of that. But the fans play a role as well. Sometimes fans try and pretend like, oh, me saying something doesn't impact the team. The next minute they're saying they're the most important fucking people in football. Which is it? Are you important with a voice and power and control? Or are you just a no mark? And if you're a no mark, I don't want you to moan about anything that happens to you. It's either one or the other. You're either important or you're not. You can't pick and choose when what you say and do is important, in my opinion. And I think what we say and do in this era is more potent than ever because what we say and do gets into them dressing rooms instantly. And we know this, that the players speak about what they see, what they read. And they'll all go, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't impact me. But it certainly does. It certainly does, in my opinion, especially if they're doing badly, because it's human instinct to protect yourself. You'll get players that's like going, oh, look, all my fan base is saying this about me, supporting me. I might kind of push that narrative a little bit. I might say something that alludes to that in a press conference, because at least then I know there's a group of millions of people that are going to have my back. rather than maybe being a little bit honest. And I just think as an English, we're in a lot of trouble at the moment. But look, viewers, I'd love to get your thoughts and love to get your feelings on England and the Euros in general. The Trent hate is now out of control. All his fault. I don't think people are hating on Trent. Forget idiots online. Forget idiots. I think people are just saying, it's not Trent. A lot of people are saying play Trent at right back. Just stop playing him in central midfield. But there we go.
Every time he makes a change, he takes off Trent and he brings on Conor Gallagher. Why is he not taking off Walker, putting Trent in right back, and then bring on Conor Gallagher? I don't understand why he brings on Conor Gallagher, by the way. I never get it. Every time I look at this team, I'm like, you know what? They need some control. Probably Wharton or Maynor coming on. I see Gallagher coming on. What is that adding to the team? Trent is not a like-for-like sub with Conor Gallagher. One of them is good on the ball. One of them just runs around and he's a pest on the pitch. So how is this a like-for-like substitution when you need to gain control? So you actually took out one more baller, aka Trent, who's very good technically, and you kept on now got Conor Gallagher and Kyle Walker is there. And Kyle Walker doesn't offer you much on the ball anyways. The reason Kyle Walker thrives in City, even though he's been low-key washed recently, but people don't want to talk about it, it's because he has so many more technical players around him. And he doesn't have the same technical players around him in England, which is why it's back to my point, Terry. That super chat proves what I'm trying to say. Every time you're gonna call out someone to get removed from this team, get benched, blah blah blah, they're gonna be like, yeah, he's being sacrificed. Oh, he's being scapegoat.
Yeah.
Oh, he's being harassed, and no one wants to hear. I can't do anything about it.
I completely agree, and I think it's not strange. I understand why people are saying what it is they're saying, but I think a lot of them are just completely wrong, completely off. These things have to be discussed. They have to be put out there, and I think the last World Cup, yes, we went out in the quarters, but we had a good group stage, started the knockout stage as well. And everybody, Terry, you wanted him sacked before the tournament. You were wrong. And I sort of said at the time, like in the joy of it, maybe I was wrong. But as soon as it ended, I was like, actually, no, I'm not going to let the excitement of the tournament and my it is desperation to win. I want my nation to win a trophy to come out. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But listen, viewers, give us your thoughts, give us your feelings in the comments section below. Make sure you like and you share this video. On some transfer stories today that we want to talk about and the players surrounding it. It's been just before we went live, a journalist called Nick, I want to try and pronounce it right, Ciramano, who is based out in Italy, who's been on the ball so far when it comes to the Joshua Zirkzee deal, has stated that Manchester United have found an agreement in principle with the agent of Joshua Zirkzee, and Bologna are now bracing themselves for United to put the bid in, to the release clause bid, which is around 35 million. It is reported that we're getting around about a 50% discount on the agent fee, so from sort of 12 million down to 6 million, which is about in line with what you pay agents now. So you're looking at a total of around 40 million English pounds to buy Joshua Zirkzee. I'm really intrigued. I think a lot of people still wait for that kind of David Ornstein Fabrizio tweet about it. But there does seem to be a fair amount of credibility behind this. Sky Sports in the UK have reported on it. What's your thoughts on Man United signing a striker and a profile such as Joshua Zirkzee to add to our ranks next season?
I like him. I did a little bit of research about him. First of all, for the people who don't know, he's 23, so he's not ideally that experienced player that everyone thinks we need to add to this team. Because everyone thinks we need to add an experienced striker, and I hear it, by the way. But he's not that much experience. He's only 2 years older than Højlund. But he's a completely different profile than Højlund, and that's what I like about him. He's not. I don't think he's going to be that guy that's going to bag like 25 to 30 goals a season. He's not that type of profile. He reminds me a little bit more of a Martial profile, where he likes to get involved in the build-up. He likes the ball to feet. He likes to play with the back to goal a lot. He could play the multiple ways, but he's not shy of getting the ball and actually moving around. He has a little bit of flair about him. Not the best dribbler, but he's a decent dribbler. So he kind of likes to get involved more rather than just be that poacher, rather than be that guy just like playing off the shoulder and tries to nick a goal here and there in the box. He's not that type of guy. He's not just a finisher. He's like a little bit more all-rounded. And I like that about him. I like his profile. I think he had only 11 goals in the league last season. So like 11 goals and 5 assists. To me, that speaks Martial. Because Martial's best season, remember when we had Martial in his peak, I think he had like 16 goals in the Premier League, which is really, if you're being honest, like for a top United striker compared to our past, that's around not really a lot of goals. I think we look at 20 and more and we're like, all right, you're a top finisher. But he offers a lot more in the all round play. And I think it's forced on me now at this point that Ten Hag is going to stay, so I might as well talk about it the way he likes his strikers, and he likes his strikers to be a little bit more involved. We saw him try to replicate a little bit more when he had Weghorst, even though Weghorst is not that technically gifted, but Weghorst used to actually try to be on the ball to create that space in behind, which is why to be fair, Rashford thrived. Do I look at him as being our starter next year? 100%. He comes in and he absolutely takes Hoyland's position right away because he does a lot more in the game than just wait for service, and that's been one of my biggest criticisms of Hoyland all season. When people say he doesn't get chances created for him, big players, big up Steve, absolutely spot on with this comment, saying he's a very high IQ player. When you watch, just go watch a little bit of his stuff. You're gonna see a lot of glimpses of this and that, not necessarily just G&A highlight. And that's what I like about if you ever watch a comp of a player and it doesn't just involve goals, that's always a good sign. I hate nothing more than a comp that just shows goals because it means like you're not showing me what else he does in the game. You know, he does a lot more in the game. And to be fair, at that price, at 70, at 40 mil, that's not bad at all, considering that we paid 70 last year for Højlund. He completely brings a different dynamic, and I'll be excited for it. I wouldn't put a lot of hope on it. I don't think he comes in and he right away becomes like a top 3, top 4 striker in the league. Not at all. But it is a step in the he fits the timeline a little bit more, because I've had a few discussions yesterday and some other days with United fans. And some of them want an experience. I was talking to Griggs yesterday. He said he wants a Morata in this United team. And he was like, he feels like as a second striker in this team next to Højlund, he would offer a different dynamic and he would offer a lot more experience. Plus, he's played for big clubs. But this was my argument. Why do we need a little bit more of an experienced striker when, let's be honest, we did force ourselves into a second rebuild now with Ten Hag, especially with the whole structure changing.
When people say that, sorry, but when people say about a second striker, you need 2 or 3 at a club. And it's just this idea. Now that most teams play with 1 striker, you don't need 4 as we used to have, but we used to play with 2. But when you had played with 2 strikers, you needed 4. If you're playing with 1, at the very least you need 2, if not 3. And for me, what I love about this deal is that he's different from Rasmus Højlund. So I don't really care which one starts. I like the fact they're different. It means whatever one you bring on, if it's for the other or if it's coming on the field together, and I think they can play together because they're a different type of striker, it means you're going to try and do something different. It gives the opponent something different to think about. I like that depth. One thing around Zirkzee that I've watched, one thing about him I've read in a lot of the scouting reports is he's improvement off the ball over the last couple of years. He was playing in a pressing team last year, and he ranked top in Serie A for the most amount of turnovers last season, and he won the most. I think he was 2nd or 3rd on the list for the most possession won in the opponent's box. And all these little things add up to what I think could make a very good signing. There's always that, will he adapt and play well in England? Will he adapt to Manchester United? Those question marks hang over him because sometimes this just happens. And me and my brother were actually talking earlier on today about Mahalo Mudryk, and my brother was talking about how Courtney, a really prominent boxing coach, spoke once about how there were fighters in his club where he trains that are amateur or sort of semi-pro. But in sort of sparring and in training, they will school some of the higher-rated professional boxers and batter them. But you put them in a ring where the lights are shining on them and there's an audience there and the media are taking notes, and something don't work in their head. And suddenly they look average. And that's why there is I'm so shocked that not enough football fans speak about the mentality of a player. And that doesn't mean you're lazy or you don't work hard. Some people, the stadium gets bigger, the lights get brighter, the noise gets louder. For some people, that is fuel. And like, yes, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is sort of a standout example. The more pressure that was put upon him, generally the better he got in his career. Some people, the bigger that pressure gets, they shrink and they shrink and they shrink. And it was my only real criticism I ever had of Martial, is I felt that when the competition for his position grew at the club, he shrunk. When he was one of the only people there through people leaving or injuries, he was absolutely amazing. But there has to be competition because you need strength in depth. So look, I hope it works out if we bring him in. What is great, it's going to be around 30 to 40 million pounds, and that represents a good piece of business. It's low risk based on that money in 2024 as well, which I think is key. If we were dropping 70 or 80 million pound on him, I would be worried, because for a lot of people, this will almost go under the radar as well. He's not going to be in the discussions on the media shows, the talk shows, the big social media networks before the season starts, because he's not a 70, 80 million pound player. Plus, I agree with you. I probably would like to see him start. I also felt Rasmus at the end of last season was looking much better coming on from the bench as he learns his game, because he's still very raw. So for me, it's, again, you know the way I view football. Also, we both like the same player here, which is interesting because I like ugly footballers. But just putting it out there. But
most of the players you rate are ugly. Let's be honest.
No, it's just I see it's more delivery. But I like Zirkzee. But again, I'm up for it, and I'm intrigued to see who else we kind of go in for. But he's very good in the approach play. We're looking at the likes of Lenny Yoro. We're looking at Branthwaite as an example. We seem to be looking at lots of players that are comfortable with the ball at their feet, which feeds into the early reports that the club are going to be telling the manager, we want to become a possession-based team, which I know that we're none of us are happy. You're not, and I haven't been happy with him, but he should be able to coach that, because that's literally what he coached his whole life. So we will see how.
This is why when we spoke this season about the lack of technical players that we have, I remember KJ made this comment, and it actually pissed me off. He said something about, like, just nutmegs and step overs. That is not what a technical player is. A technical player can receive the ball, can take a touch on a ball, can pick a pass, intelligent play. That is a part of being a technical. Not everything technical, because I feel like when you talk about technical players and we say ballers, people just think I'm thinking of Ronaldinho as an example. That's not what technical is. We do have a severe lack of technical players in this team, which is why, and you're gonna like this commentary. At the end of the season, when we start playing Ahmad, the likes of Bruno, as an example, start looking better. You know why? Because he had a player that, instead of just running him behind like Garnacho does and Højlund does and Rashford does, he actually had someone to play off. And it just shows you, surprise, surprise, the more you have technical players in this team, the more they can actually move the ball around. You cannot be a position-based team when most of your players are not good at the ball. And that's something we've had last year.
Do you know what I think it comes down to? And I'm not, I get why you're frustrated with what KJ said, but this is why conversations on podcasts are so key. I get accused sometimes of trying to catch people out, and I'm not. I ask questions because I want people to actually break down what they want. So when you say technical and KJ says technical, you both might be thinking about slightly different things. So it's always important that one of the most important questions to ask is, when you say technical ability, what do you actually mean? Because what he's calling technical ability, you might call flair and skills and tricks. As an example, me and Lee Gunner had a real big debate once. He separates finishing from being a good goal scorer, or I don't necessarily do. I think if you're a good finisher, you're also a good goal scorer. I think they're, like, for me, that I feel like they're one of the same, where he separates them, and that's fair. But it helps in a debate or a conversation if you know each other's, if you understand each other's definition. I've seen James McLean getting a lot of stick because he said that. I think he's been. It's done a little bit of I'm going to dig at the English, which is fine because he's Irish and it's part of the banter between the nations. But he said this thing about Declan Rice. Declan Rice is not world class because he wouldn't get into every team in the world. But not everybody's version of world class is that you can get into any team in the world. Because if there was 4 players of Rodri's quality, by your definition, 2 of them are not getting into every team in the world. Therefore, you're saying they're not world class. So it's about understanding where people are coming from when they say things, as opposed to what it is they say. So I agree with you. Technical ability to me isn't actually somewhat, because there are players like, for instance, Wilfried Zaha has brilliant flair and skills. I don't think he's technically that good. Sometimes that guy tackles himself at least 3 or 4 times a game. And that's because do you get where I'm coming from? So
you can have flair without being a technical flair and tech. Yeah. You know who's the best example? Yannick Bolasie. Yannick Bolasie, that was a street baller. He had all the skills and but he's
technical ability was low.
If you can't shoot, are you really technical? If you can't actually wait a cross or a pass, are you actually technical?
Michael Carrick, highly technical, almost no flair. But 100%. His first touch was great. His awareness was good. His weight of pass was like, it's things like this. Technical ability means you can weight a pass great. Like Scott McTominay, part of me loves him, right? Just because he's a United player. But his inability to judge the weight of sometimes the way he drills a ball at someone is ridiculous. Like, you have to have an amazing touch to control some of his passes because his subtlety on the ball is off because he doesn't have the technical ability. Where when it's Manu, you look at Manu as an example, he could kick an egg to you and it wouldn't crack because he knows how to hit it in the right way. And there is a fundamental difference.
By the way, I'm happy that Manu's not playing. I know that there's a little bit of a United bias that I have to say. I'm so happy he's not playing. When he came on in the first game and they were getting peppered by Serbia, I was so worried England would concede and they blame him because I thought they'd do the same thing they did to Saka when he played that 25 minutes and they put him on every front page. I was very worried of that. Manu is probably one of the most technical players in that midfield, if not the most technical one next to Morton. But I'm so happy he's not playing because this is an absolute shit show of a midfield.
I do hear you on that. There's part of me that is happy that there's no Man United players being criticised this summer, and it's nice. Speaking of another interesting player, had a great game yesterday. He's linked today to Arsenal and to Chelsea. That is Nico Williams, a player that I haven't watched many times. And social media, the whole time I've seen his name mentioned in the last year, it is divided like 50-50. People either rate him highly or they think he's just a hipster's favorite, an overrated showboater. I've seen the combination of the two things. He was sensational last night, though, I thought other than the miss that he had, he should have scored, but his general play was excellent. What do you make of him as a player, and how good do you think he would do at Arsenal or Chelsea?
He's something that most our teams don't have, which is just a pure winger that can play on both sides. I hear the criticism that he gets when you compare him next to his companion, as an example, Yamal. Is he on Lamine Yamal's level? No. Is he ever going to be on Lamine Yamal's level? Probably not, because Lamine Yamal is absolutely generational. But you don't need about 3-4 Yamals in your team. You can only afford to have one. Sometimes you need that direct winger. We've seen Pep. I'm so sorry. This is going to offend a lot of people. If Pep is recruiting the likes of Doku, who a lot of people think he's shit, and a lot of people think, and by the way, I have a lot of criticism for him as well. I don't rate him that high. But if Pep identifies that even his team that keeps the ball more than anyone else needs a type of winger who's direct, who can play on both sides, who likes to take on his man, then I'm sorry that I will agree with one of the best, if not the best tactician of all time. Every team needs a Nico Williams. Nico Williams actually has a little bit more on the legs of Jeremy Doku because he's two-footed. He's ambidextrous. He can play with his left. He can play with his right. He can play on the right side. He can play on the left side. And he likes to be direct. He likes to take on it. He's pretty successful at it as well. You know, he's not going to give you an 8 or 9 out of 10 every game. He will drop some stinkers. But when you look at United as an example, who else is linked with him, Terry? United, Arsenal, and who?
Mm-hmm.
You said who? There's one more team.
Arsenal, Chelsea are linked to him. I think they were linked to him last year as well.
Okay, so Chelsea. Let's talk about Arsenal as an example because Chelsea just linked with everyone, and I couldn't be bothered right now. Arsenal as an example. What is the main thing they've been complaining about for a couple years? Saka has no backup. Now, Nico Williams would start for Arsenal. He would go to that left-hand side instead of Martinelli. But what happens when you need Saka to sit a game? When Saka's not playing well, he deserves to be benched. You easily put him on the right, and then you play either a Trossard or a Martinelli, whoever's available on the left. We don't have a lot of these direct wingers. That's why I said United and I said Arsenal. They need these type of wingers. Yes, he's not everyone's cup of tea. Yes, he could be a little bit wasteful sometimes. But he's also someone who has a very cheap release clause. I believe he's only at 40-50 million, if I'm correct, Terry.
Yeah, it's quite low. It's quite low.
It's a low one. And he's only going to get better from here. If anything, they want him in Barcelona. They probably just don't have the money because they're trying to partner him with Yamal on the right side. And these are the wingers. So every Premier League team that actually needs a winger, bar City, I would say maybe, they should be all over this signing. Even Liverpool, if they lose Diaz, they should be all over this signing because this kid, how old is he? 20? He can only get better from here. He already has the skill set to improve on, which is something I'm very critical of. When people talk about age, a lot of times I don't entertain it because if you don't have the skill set to build on, I don't care about your age. I just think you're shit anyways. But the kid is not shit. He can only get smarter as a player. His skill set is there. I already named someone. His ball striking is decent. He likes to take on his man. He can play with 2 feet. I love him at United next season. I am desperate for a type of a winger like him into my team next season. So everyone should be all over this signing.
Yeah, a lot of people, again, as I say, I haven't watched too much of him, so I don't have a sort of deep-rooted opinion. I mean, what I have seen, though, looks pretty decent. he plays like I watched him last night and thought, great. What people have said to me about him, though, is that what you saw last night kind of only happens 1 in every 4 games. Now, I can't dispute it because I don't watch enough games. I'm just sort of taking people's word for it. And I suppose that is a little bit of a concern. But again, at the price that you're talking, you think about how much Mihailo Mudryk costs. You think about how much Chelsea maybe are about to go and spend on Duran, saying around 40 odd million. Surely, when you look at Nico Williams, it's far less of a risk. He looks better than him.
What is this Duran link, anyways? Can someone tell me what is this? And oh my God, Don! I heard Don talking about. I'm not really surprised. I said that Don would literally sell salt to Snail. That's how much this guy just wants to sit there and defend everything that Chelsea does. He'll always convince you that's the right move. Don, I hope you're watching this and you listen to this.
Or Don rating the move.
Yeah, he said it's the right move for Chelsea. He said I did. Of course you did, Don. I when Don did it says I did research on it and I like the move. I envisioned Don going on 1 or 2 comps, sitting there for 30 minutes thinking about it, and he's like, yeah, it's the right move. But at some point in the season, something bad is going to happen, and he's going to be like, "Oh, I criticize the players." You do not need a Duran. I don't know much about Duran. I'm not even going to sit here and waffle about it. But I've seen glimpses of what he's done last season for Villa. He looks like a decent player. But who realistically sat here in the last couple years, heard so much talk about scouts rating Duran? Oh, he's the next this, he's the next that. Oh, everyone is over the sign. Where did this even come from? Like, we're talking about them needing a striker to replace Nico Williams, not Nico Williams, what's his name? Nico Jackson. Because Nico Jackson is a decent attacker, but he's not really that out-and-out 9 who's going to bag all these goals for him. So they need more of a goal scorer. And then you go for Duran. Where did this come from? Like, there was talks about Openda. There was talks about like so many other strikers out there. The striker market this season is more saturated than last season, which is why last season only like the notable moves were who? Kane to Bayern, and we had to spend 70 million on a second striker in Atalanta because there was no strikers out there. This season, there's so many strikers out there. People would rather go for a Duran than all these other names. I don't get it. Where did this even come from? I did not hear one Chelsea fan big up Duran all of last season. What, he scored a brace towards the end of the season? I forgot who it played when he scored
Liverpool.
A brace. Liverpool, there you go.
And one of them was an absolute fluke of a goal.
Wasn't it a deflection or something? I forgot.
Yeah, I think the ball got like cleared and his foot went up. Yeah, ball got cleared, his foot went up in the air and went in or something like that. Yeah,
I really don't know what these.
They're also linked with the young striker at Ati, and I think it's pronounced Omoroduran.
Samuel Omoroduran.
Yeah, and I just quote what Fabrizio Romano has said today. He says that Chelsea is still working on Samu. It's not over yet. Contact is still taking place. So they're pushing hard for him. They're pushing for Duran, and at the same time, Chelsea, they've done a deal to sell Ian Maatsen.
I mean, it looks like a lot of backward moves. I'm not gonna lie. Selling Maatsen, I understand. I think I was hearing some Chelsea fans talking about it. He wanted to move anyways. They were gonna get a good fee for him. I don't think it's the right move because he's a very good player. But I mean, if you're gonna get good money for him, it is what it is. You know, if his mind was set on leaving, at least you're getting good money for it. So I'm not gonna be so against it. But these striker links, I'm not gonna lie, is just a joke. The biggest issue they had last season is that they weren't scoring goals. We were talking about their conversion rate. We're talking about how many chances they created and they weren't scoring. There's so many games that they had where, like, if they had a striker, they would have won today. So it wasn't on Poch, it wasn't on the players, blah, blah, blah. It was just on the strikers. And then you're linked with Duran and that Samu guy. I'd never heard of this guy until yesterday. I never knew who it was. I think he plays for Alaves or something. I swear, I would be lying to you if I said I know anything about him. What are these links? I thought this is the year they're moving into more experienced players. I thought this is the year that they're moving into, you know what, no more 24 and younger players. We already have a core of young players that gained a season or two of experience. Let's start building around them. Let's start adding them a little bit of experience in the back line and in the midfield and in the front line. They're going by again by all these just young players again, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It's if they signed any of these unknown strikers, I think they're gonna have another shit season again. I'm gonna be very honest with you. And I don't know where this takes Chelsea. I wish this was a show where we had some Chelsea fans, like the top 6 or whatever, so I can get their opinions. But I'm not gonna lie, I would not be inspired by these moves. None of these moves would move me as a Chelsea fan. And I don't think, once again, I'm sitting here and I'm questioning, okay, what is the plan? What is the recruitment strategy that they're using at that club? Are they still just going for young players as they did the last 3 years? And it looks like it. It doesn't look like they're moving like a serious club right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, I was looking at some of the stats earlier. Like Duran has the best conversion rate of all three at 29%, but that was based on just 17 shots over the course of the whole season. So in the whole season, he just had 17 shots and he scored 5 of them. So that puts the conversion rate pretty high in relation to that. But that's only 5 goals. Samu's conversion rate scored 9 goals, yes, in 35 games, but that's off 57 shots. You know, conversion rate there of 15% as an example. And just in terms of shooting accuracy, so being on target, his shooting accuracy was at 47%. Duran, his shooting accuracy was actually at 41%. And by the way, his conversion rate dropped significantly if you literally just take off that one deflected goal, which he didn't mean to score. Does that make sense? Like, we know about that one because it's not even an outlier. You suddenly start looking at that, and that conversion rate then drops down to 33%, which is the same as Nicholas Jackson's. Nicholas Jackson's shooting accuracy at the very least was 65% of his shots were on target. You know, and I know he missed a lot of big chances, and we're not going to sit here and defend him on that. But I look at Chelsea's business, and I look at Tosin, very good signing. I look at Elise and think, wow, that would be fantastic business. They were linked earlier on this summer to Julian Alvarez. If they bring him in, again, excellent business. But then I look at what they're doing up front, and I kind of get where Don's coming from. Don said this to me the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, but words to the effect of, if Duran gets the chances Nicholas Jackson got, he will bury them.
But what is the proof?
And well, yeah, I mean, maybe he will, but I'm not sure about the movement of Duran. I'm not sure about his durability. And I know you can't always judge this. I got this wrong once when I said, well, why would Real Madrid get rid of Odegaard if he was that good? Turns out he's quite good. But as a general rule, the fact that Villa are willing to let him go and Unai Emery is like, yep, give us 40 million and it's over, that just feels like a bit of a red flag to me. Because if he was this young talent that's going to be an absolute superstar, why are Villa turning their back on it?
Who? You know who they did that with? Jacob Ramsey. Is it Jacob Ramsey? I think it's Jacob Ramsey. There's 2 of them. I think it's Jacob, the one in the midfield. They wouldn't sell him because they knew they had the kid had the potential, and as they grow, they wanted to keep him in the team. You're absolutely spot on by saying that, because they're going into Champions League next year, so they technically don't need to sell anyone right now. They're actually getting money from going into the Champions League. For a club like Villa, that's big for them. Okay? So if anything, they're trying to add a little bit of Champions League experience. Why would you want to sell a player like him when you're going into a bigger tournament and you actually need the depth? Which is why this signing stinks. It stinks. It reeks. It makes no sense. He does not move the needle for Chelsea. He does not add anything that they don't already have. They already have a lot of young players. They already have a lot of unproven players. They already have a lot of players that they're experimenting with. And I thought they're going to get some needle movers this year. Not necessarily needle movers to the point where they're going to compete for trophies, because I still think they're far off it. But you need a little bit more experience there. And I don't know what this move is. It's a joke.
Blaze with a good challenge here says, the greatest manager in the world let Palmer leave. Yes, he did. The difference I would say is this. Palmer is playing in a team that is stacked ahead of him with top-class to world-class players. Where, what do Villa have if Ollie Watkins goes down? Very little. So, and by the way, I still think City shouldn't have done that. I still think that was a mistake. So, that for me is an outlier, though, because you're looking at the squad and the situation, and the player essentially said, well, I don't want to be a squad player, so the club let him go. But do I think if they didn't have Foden, would they have let him go? Not in your Nelly, because he'd have been playing regularly. So I think the situation is different. I get where you're coming from, Blaze, and I understand it. But are you telling me, like, Blaze, you've been a viewer of this channel for a long time, a regular super chatter. I've got a lot of love and respect. Are you honestly excited about the Duran deal? some of your other business looks really good, and I've praised it. I'm also someone that hasn't gone in on your new manager. I'm going to give it time, see how you play. But John Duran, this young Samu guy from Ati, like, are you genuinely enthused by these deals? Or are you looking at it as, well, this just, or not? I'd love to know, because the Chelsea fan base is divided. I've seen a lot of big Chelsea accounts fuming at this. And then others, what I will say about the young lad from Spain is Atletico are saying absolutely not at any price. Like, he is a star for the future. So there is something in that, because they're trying desperately to keep him. And remember, Man City tried to convince Cole Palmer to stay. So again, this is different in the sense of Villa are just happy for him to go. And that
they didn't want Palmer to leave, by the way.
That'd be a red flag for me.
Yeah, they didn't want him to leave. They wanted to sell him to send him out on loan.
Love you, Blaze. Love you, bro. Love that comment. It made me laugh.
They didn't want to sell Palmer. Palmer wanted to leave. They said, we'll loan him out. He said, no, if I'm not going to play, I don't want to be loaned out. Just sell me. And City have a policy of not having players basically against their will. Like, if they want to leave, they just always let them leave. They've always done that. So it's not really the same comparison. But I hear what he's trying to say with
it. Duran is the Broya replacement.
Yeah, he's probably
why wouldn't you sign? Why wouldn't you sign better than Broya?
You need a starter.
Why wouldn't you sign someone that's better?
But that's the thing there. Like, it's just like these Chelsea fans. It's just I don't get it. I try to be objective when I talk about Chelsea, you know, and not scream punch out and all that stuff that they used to get trolled for. But are you really being serious by starting with Duran is going to be your starter next season? Like, how can I take you seriously? Like, you guys didn't want that last season. Not a single person would have said that. You were talking about Osimhen. Oh yeah, watch until we get Osimhen. And now you're telling me you want Duran. Like, the flip-flopping is crazy. They'll just say anything that pleases them. And I don't get it, bro.
I just think, do you know what? It's about being honest. Like, as I say, I said about I'm gonna be objectively supportive of what Man United are currently doing. But it doesn't mean I'll praise everything we do. If we were about to sign Duran, I would be worried. I'd be very, very worried. Uncle Jester said Duran is not a starter.
But you need a starter. That's my point, Uncle Jester. You need a better striker to start next season.
And that's, I mean, most Chelsea fans said that all year. I'd love to understand, like, Uncle Jester, who else do you think you're going to sign instead? Like, I'm asking that a genuine question. Who is going to be the starting striker next year? After you all said you need a better striker.
You just said it. Jackson's the starter. There you go. There you go. Same season again.
Matt here said you're just being a Chelsea hater today.
How? Because I said Duran is not a good signing.
When he says the Terrace has converted him, listen, I've been one of the most complimentary people about Chelsea over the last 4 to 5 years. I'm even praising some of the stuff you're doing this summer, but we can't be sitting here and saying, yeah, go on, Chelsea fans, and gassing up a player like Duran, who none of us think are good enough. Why would I lie to you all? Isn't that why you watch the Football Terrace? Because you get our honest opinions, as opposed to, I'm going to blow smoke up your ass. People go, yeah, we always say nice things about Arsenal. I didn't when Arsenal was shit. I said a lot of negative things about Arsenal when they weren't a good team. And if Chelsea are brilliant next year and Duran scores goals, I'll be the first to say I got that wrong. He's a brilliant player. Wow, look at what he's doing. 100%.
But here's the thing. So we come out here and we kind of give Chelsea a little bit of smoke for not moving correctly. We're haters. But when Don gasses up every move, he's deluded. So what are we meant to do?
Matt says, name the actual attainable targets they should be interested in buying instead.
There's so many strikers in the market. Are we going to list them again? Started with Osimhen that everyone wanted. Tony, Solanke, Zirkzee. There's so many strikers out there that could be for sale this summer, especially Premier League ones. What's the guy from Girona? Dubvik. There's so many strikers out there. You're going for unknown names, players who are not really.
Yeah, you got Dolbeck. Like, Xisco's obviously off the table. There's Zirkzee that Manchester United.
Boniface. There you go.
Looking at, there's Guirassy that's available for £15 million.
Guirassy.
Ivan Toney is available.
Gyökeres.
Yep, Gyökeres is out there. You've got Boniface that you could potentially look at. There's quite a few players out there that you could. Who's the guy at Leipzig? Openda.
Openda, I mentioned him earlier. Yeah, the
Turam,
striker.
Vlahovic potentially. I mean, you could try and break the bank for Watkins and throwing it out there. I mean, Watkins probably isn't attainable, to be fair, by your point. I swear, and listen, and for experience, Antoine Griezmann, low buyout clause this summer.
No, he's not a striker.
I know he's not going to say yes, but like,
He's not a striker anyways. He's a 10. He's a 10.
Yeah, I know he is, but you could, you could kind of, there are options out there that I think are better than the players are going for. That's all I'm saying that I think about. Look, I want to thank everybody that has tuned into the show. We're live after this evening's game between the Netherlands and France. Very excited about that one. It's a short version of Straight Facts, but by next week, it'll all be back to normal because all the games go to like 8 p.m. From next week, group game wise anyway. So we'll be back to normal. I don't think there's any games next Friday. Might be some knockout games. I'm not sure. But yes, we're back to normal with most of our shows from next week. Staffy, always a pleasure, brother, to sit and speak football with you. To all of our viewers, thank you. Make sure you join our group chat by scanning that QR code so you don't miss any notifications for our shows. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again.